As the crisis in Ukraine continues day after day, President Joe Biden has made some pretty incendiary remarks on the world stage, which the White House has had to walk back, sometimes just minutes after he says them. Folks, we haven't seen walkbacks like this since Michael Jackson did the moonwalk to the tune of Billie Jean. And by the way, when he did it, he was wearing the jacket that Trey is wearing tonight. I just want you to know. Now, is it incoherent foreign policy, or is it just an incoherent president? My first guest knows the importance of smart diplomacy and peace through strength, having served in the Trump administration as a spokesperson to the State Department. Morgan Ortagus joins us tonight. We are very happy to have her. Welcome, please, Morgan Ortagus. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great having you here.
Thank you.
My daughter is somebody who absolutely adores you. She considered you one of her dear friends in the Trump administration and has great admiration for your intelligence and your capacity. And I want to get into a lot of policy stuff about what's happening with Ukraine. But, you know, one of the things that intrigues me about you, Morgan, most people don't know that you are a military reserve officer, yes, even now, right?
That's right.
U.S. Navy?
Yes, sir.
Serving our country. And I think that is significant. I also think that I love the fact that you are a first-generation college graduate, went on to get a master's from Johns Hopkins. It's quite I'd say, an incredible story of working your way, the old-fashioned, hard work, to end up traveling with the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to 50 countries across the world. What a ride, huh?
That you could not have said it better. It took a lot of hard work, but a lot of support. I have two amazing parents, and even though they had not been to college, in fact, I think my father might have even been the first to graduate high school. You know, of his generation, my grandparents certainly didn't graduate high school. But I had two amazing parents who believed in the American dream and said you could go anywhere. And I just believed them, right? I said, okay, well, this is great. And, you know, speaking of your daughter, Sarah, you know, I think the world of her, I can't wait to see her be sworn in as governor here just a few months.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, too.
Yes. I will tell you, one of my first times that we had an international incident when I became State Department spokesperson, Sarah was still at the White House, and North Korea tested missiles. I think it was like for the first, you know, the first time for me on the job. It was a very big deal. It was a Friday night. I just ordered Chinese food, and I got panicked, and I called Sarah, and Sarah was clearly already at dinner, and she said, "What, Morgan?" And I told her what was going on. She goes, "Well, someone needs to tell the president." I said, "Yeah, hopefully you and not me."
Did you tell the president?
No, she did. She did. Yeah, she was a good boss.
You know, there's a lot to tell the president these days. I'm not sure that he would remember that we told him. But it is concerning.
He's talking about Biden.
Oh, absolutely. It is concerning that in the last couple of weeks, he has created not one, but several international incidences by going off his very carefully prepared script. Here's a guy who's been in Washington for over 50 years. He prides himself on being a foreign policy expert. Morgan, you would think at this point he would understand that when a president utters something, the world stops and pays attention. As the old saying goes, president sneezes and the world catches a cold.
Yes.
When he goes out and says something like, this guy talking about Putin, he's got to go, it sounds like that's a threat and we're going to make a regime change.
That's right.
How does his staff not reel that in and say, Mr. President, you just can't go out there and say things that stir the world? They
must be cringing and dying inside. Listen, I think it is so important because we are in such a perilous time. I mean, listen, during the Trump administration, they would say to us, you know, well, why is Trump saying X, Y, Z? And I said, well, because he means it. Yeah. And President Trump and Mike Pompeo, my boss, the Secretary of State, spoke with moral authority and clarity because they believed in America's goodness and greatness and America's place in the world. And I think that part of the problem that you're having, I think if you back up and you look at Biden and Kamala Harris and their entire team, Secretary Blinken, they don't believe in the greatness of America. They're constantly apologizing for America. I mean, look at the 1519 Project, right? Look at what they're trying to teach our children in schools, and what you talked about in your monologue. So whenever you say that America is fundamentally a racist nation and is founded on white supremacy, if you believe that, how are you ever going to go on the world stage and stand up for America? If you can't stand up for America at home, you can't stand up for her abroad.
That's a great point. A great point. You work for one of my very favorite people in the country, and that's Mike Pompeo. Yeah. Brilliant, experienced, capable in every way. Tell me the difference between what you saw in Secretary of State Pompeo and what you're seeing in Secretary of State Blinken.
Well, he was incredibly tough, and I think our enemies were scared of him, as they should be. And he is a brilliant man, but I was in the room with him multiple times whenever he met the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. I was with him whenever he met Putin and the Chinese. I mean, you name it, whatever autocrat around the world he had to meet with. And I will say that in those meetings, I was so lucky and so blessed that he brought me into those meetings. And I know, as Sarah did with the president, you learn so much watching the two leaders interact. And he always stood strong and stood firm for America. He always stood firm for President Trump. He never wavered. Even if the other person tried to make a little joke at his expense, he didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He held the line, and he said, we are going to put America first and Americans first in all of our foreign policy decisions. And I can't tell you the number of meetings that I was in when I thought, gosh, this country is so lucky to have him as a Secretary of State, because he was unapologetically America first in every room with no cameras and no one in the room but staff.
There's also an important point. In 4 years of President Trump's time, and I'm not trying to make this a political statement, just an observation, Vladimir Putin didn't try to take anything. He didn't take his army anywhere outside of the Russian borders. Under Obama, he took them into Crimea and Georgia, and under Biden, he's taken them now into Ukraine with an all-out assault against their freedom and their sovereignty. Why didn't Putin do this under Trump? Because we were always told by the press that Trump was, Putin's puppet, but it sure didn't seem that way.
So I think dealing with dictators is sort of like dealing with toddlers. So you've had kids, you have grandkids. I have a 17-month-old. And, when she wants a cookie, she's very demanding. And she comes to me because I'm the weak link. And she knows that I'm going to give her the little cookie. And I can tell you that dealing with dictators is very similar to dealing with my toddler. They're going to do exactly what they think they can get away with, right? And so if you don't put strong red lines that you mean, red lines that if are crossed, it means something, then they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. So it's a series of things that if you're not paying attention like I do, because I'm a nerd, if you're not paying attention to it, which hopefully most of you aren't, and you're living a nice life, not worrying about these things, you think, oh, okay, well, we just did something that sounds really tough. It sounds tough, but it's not the full knockout punch. And Biden refuses to give the full knockout punch, I believe, because he has the Russians negotiating right now, at this moment, as all of us are sitting here in Vienna on our behalf. Not with, by the way, we are not negotiating with the Iranians. The Russians are negotiating on our behalf in Iran, which will lead to a $10 billion, that's with a B, $10 billion in sanctions immunity for Russia and Iran to build nuclear power plants.
It's the most amazing thing, Morgan, that we are saying to Russia, in the midst of the war that they have created and the devastation that they have impacted upon the people of Ukraine, we'd like for you to go and be the negotiating party with a country that has vowed that they will destroy both Israel and the United States.
Right.
This is insane. We've only got about a minute, so I want you to land the plane on this one. President Trump got some things done that people said he couldn't and wouldn't do, and they were unconventional.
Yes.
The Abraham Accords, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that people said would just blow the Middle East all to pieces.
That's right.
Yet everything the diplomatic establishment and the military establishment said would happen under Donald Trump's decisions did not happen. And in fact, it turned out for the good. Why?
because he was right on the policy, and he wasn't afraid to make decisions that so many presidents before him were afraid. You know, it was the law of the land. The law of the land that the U.S. Embassy had to be moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And what did Congress do? They constantly passed a waiver. I think it was every 6 months that they had to pass this waiver so that we wouldn't move the embassy. And Donald Trump, as an outsider, looked at it and said, wait a minute, but the law says this is where the embassy is supposed to be, and you're passing a waiver to subvert the law? That doesn't make any sense. I think I'm going to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Same with the recognition of the Golan Heights. Same with the maximum economic pressure campaign against Iran. And I can tell you, I was a part of Abraham Accords. I was in the Oval Office with the president when you had Netanyahu, so the leaders of Israel, UAE, Bahrain. Of course, we ended up getting 4 peace deals. But I was in the office, in the Oval Office, when President Trump was speaking to them. And I thought, what an amazing moment. What a moment that 4 peace deals in 26 years. By the way, John Kerry said no 4 times. He said no 4 times to our Israel policy. For every time he said no, we got a peace deal. And again, to say, I know that sometimes when I speak, it feels like things are so dour in the world, because it is pretty scary whenever we handed Abraham Accords, a peaceful Middle East to Biden. Within 3 months, Hamas was attacking Israel. Within 7 months, Kabul fell to the Taliban, 13 dead Americans. And within 1 year, we have a ground war in Europe that none of us have seen, because it's the biggest ground war in Europe since World War II. That's what you have in 1 year of this failed presidency. But there is hope, because I worked for a president, I worked for a Secretary of State who believed in American greatness and who spoke with moral clarity on the world stage the way that Ronald Reagan did. And I believe that that's going to be restored again in America.
I hope it's soon. We need it. Morgan Ortagus, thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing your insights. Now, for our audience, I know you're going to want to keep up with Morgan. We're going to show you how to do that if you go to Huckabee.tv.